afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd. Not a nerd that is sufficiently capable to figure out how to start the webinar, but a nerd nonetheless. After having commented about 10 minutes ago how smoothly things were going today, we found out we didn't have a start the broadcast button. But hey, who needs a start the broadcast button? We can just do this all by ourselves. Welcome to the, what month is this, Mary Jo? March 2013 Tabs 3 Practice Master Virtual User Group that we have in the past affectionately called the Watercooler and may continue to and may not, but we won't go into that detail until later. Today we are talking about making things look nice. And the two things or three things that we're going to focus on making look nice are the two financial statements that you can get out of General Ledger, which are your income statement and your balance sheet, and the bills. Now the bills, we've talked about making them look nice in the past, but we were talking about how to use the layout designer to put logos in and make it look like your letterhead and rearrange the top and the bottom of the bill. Today we're going to talk more about making the middle of the bill look nice, or at least show the information that you want to. We do that with something called templates and tabs. Mary Jo's going to talk about that first, and then I'm going to break in a little after halfway through, and we are going to talk about General Ledger. Now, normally I would have something up on my screen, but in my panic I didn't quite get it. So let's see if I can find it quickly while talking, and that, of course, is the key to do it while I'm talking and still be able to bring up this. Now, this is what you have over on the right-hand side of your screen. We call it the GoToWebinar control panel. It has some buttons that you may or may not want to know about. This button, if you have this showing right here, then this button will get rid of that. It will slide this big thing out of the way, and all you'll be able to see is this. And once that happens, this turns into something that looks like buttons pointing to the left, and that's how you would get this back out if you wanted to see it again. Now, you can raise your hand by clicking this button. Once you've raised your hand, Leanne will be watching for that. She will let us know at a time when she can break in, and we will unmute you. You can ask your question, and we'll make sure we get it answered, and then Leanne will mute you back up. Or if you're feeling a little bit shy, you can expose this bigger control panel, as I explained, using this button here. And once you do, you have a place where you can type a question. Leanne is also monitoring those. She will read your question on your behalf. If you have follow-up questions, just keep typing them until we get everything answered, and we'll make sure you get all your questions answered. Now, with that said, and without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Mary Jo, and she's going to talk about templates in Tabs 3.
Okay, everybody, welcome to spring. At least it says it on the calendar, but not here. It is snowing. But I am going to talk about the body of the statement. And what is in the body of the statement is the information that it is pulling from all of those fee and cost entries that you've entered over the month, and you want them to show up on the statement. Now, different clients that you have might have different requirements on what they want to see. Maybe one client wants to see the date, the initials of the timekeeper, the description, the rate, the hours, and the amount. And then you might have another client that they only want to see the hours and the amount. They don't want to see the rate. And then you might have another client that wants to see the recap at the bottom and have all of the timekeepers broken out so that they can see that timekeeper 1 worked this many hours on the case, and so on. So these billing templates that we have, statement templates, can be created and assigned matter by matter. So even within a client, if you have a certain matter that needs to see information, you can actually get that specific on a matter level to give them the description that they want to see on the bill. So we're going to talk about a couple of the different ones, where to find that and how to do it. So under the Statement tab, we've got our statement set up, and then we have what we call statement templates. Now, you're not restricted on how many you can make, so you can have several templates out here waiting to go, and then just assign them as you need to, or you can tweak them, whatever you need to do. So right now, if I look at our list here in our sample data, we've got a couple of different templates set up already. You might use one template for your draft statements that shows a lot more information for the attorneys to look at when they're reviewing those bills, but your final you want in a different way. So you can even set up a special one for drafts. You can set up more than one for drafts. So if you have a certain attorney that wants to see drafts one way and another attorney that wants to see drafts another, you could set up duplicate drafts or triplicate or whatever you need. This little column here is the default. If you have a D in front of it for your draft, that is the draft default. The F is the final default. So if you have a basic template that you're going to use most of the time and then maybe assign a special one occasionally, you can have that template set up and make that the final default or the draft default. And to do that, when you're actually in a template, there's a checkbox over here that you can say use this template as the draft for the draft statement template, or use this template for the final default. So you can use that there. But that's what this little D, if you want to see what your current default is, you can open up that lookup window. All I did is just click on the little arrow next to the template ID to see my list. That will tell you what you're currently using. Now occasionally I will sign on to a client and they will have literally just tons of these, and they're numbers, and they don't make any sense, and they'll say, well, those have been in the system forever and ever and ever. We don't even know what those are. There are reports that you can do that can give you what templates are being used so that you'll even know if it's even a template that's active. And if it's not, you can clean it out. You can delete that template out of here and get it off your list. And you can also rename these to be something that makes sense. So let's go into our a template that exists already. Here's one for the final. And you can change the description so that that makes sense to you. Give it something, you know, this is a fee and cost format with no recap. You can have two different types of formats, a statement format and an invoice format. So you may have several of these set up for different templates. Maybe there's clients that use the statement template. And what that means for the statement format is it is going to show the payments and all previous balances. If you're using an invoice format, it's only going to show that current work in process on the bill. No payment history, no payments applied, no previous balance, just that current work. And every month, that's what it'll do. Now, if you have a client that actually pays and you need to show them that they paid the bill, you'll have to switch to a statement format to actually process that payment and apply it and show it on the bill. Otherwise, it will never show payments or previous balance on an invoice format. So that's kind of a whole other issue. I'm not going to touch a lot on that today, but there are two different types. You also can include the billing history or a past due message. And a lot of times what I'll do is if you want to see samples of the billing history or what does a past due message look like, you've got some different choices here. This yellow question mark, we've talked about it before, is your page-specific help, and it actually gives samples of what the billing history looks like if you include the history. If you include the history with hours, it will also show you an example of what the past due messages look like if you choose any of these options. So that is a great place to go to get to see what it's going to actually look like. You can include statement notes. There is another tab out on the statement setup called Statement Notes. You can define those notes out there. Or I believe you can right-click and edit the statement notes here, and you can go into that and actually, you know, change whatever that message is, or you can look at whatever the statement notes that are out there already are, and you can change those just by right-clicking, and you could add a note that way if it's not there. A lot of times what you'll have here for the beginning and ending notes, you know, payments received after such and such a date will not be applied to this statement, things like that. These notes that you define here for this template will show on every single client or matter that you've associated this template with. This is like a mass message that you want. It's not a specific one for that client. It's one that's going to apply to all matters. So whatever matters are using this template. You can include the statement notes on each file on combined statements, or you can include the statement notes on the cover statement. So that's an option that you have there as well. You don't have to, but that could be included. You also have the ability to print the statement comments on draft statements. And I believe we've done a virtual user group meeting in the past talking about statement comments, but if not, that might be one we'll do in the future. But that you can actually show on the draft statements for that template as well. You can allow page breaks across the transaction descriptions or not. It's up to you if you want that to break across the page or if you want it to be all on one page and cut it off and then go to the next. So that's, if you're having that happen, there's a box here for the template. And remember, you have to choose these options for every template that you've got in there. So if this is happening on all and it's breaking that fee entry halfway across the page, you have to figure out what template they're using and then go in and actually check that so it either allows or doesn't allow it. Again, we talked about using the defaults and setting them up. This particular one for the final is what we're using for the default for the final. If it were the same template, some firms I go in, they have an F&D next to the same template, you would have that checked for that template. So that's where you can make that distinction. The fee format tab is giving you lots of different options here for what you want to include associated to the fees. Most of the time we have the standard format. That's just going to be the standard fee format that's out there. You can have an info only, and a lot of times if you have contingent cases and you're setting up a contingent template, you might have the fees just be info only. That means that they will just keep accumulating, and no matter how many final statements that you prepare or update, it's info only and it will not move it out of WIP. So if you have those kinds of templates you need to set up for contingent cases or estates that you're not going to bill till the end, you might want to use a template that is just info only. There's also a summary format, or you can show no fees at all. If you have a cost-only template that you want to prepare, that would be when you would have no fees. Again, the yellow question mark will give you some different examples of what those are and how they look. Then you decide what you want to include. This is where you're going to decide, do you want to have the date show, the initials, the description, the rate, or do I just want just the detail of the hours, the amount? Do I want it in a paragraph form? You have the ability to condense and combine fee entries into different paragraph styles. So again, yellow question mark will give you some very good examples of what those look like. You can do totals only or no hours, or so if you wanted to just show an amount, no rate, and no hours, you would change that to no hours. Amount, you have some other options here, subtotals and totals or totals only. That would take off that little amount column, and just at the bottom you could have the subtotals and totals or just the totals without having them listed line by fees. The paragraph format, I told you there's some different things here that you can combine, and again that will give you examples under the yellow question mark of what it will actually look like. But you can group all of the fees by date, date and timekeeper, totals, or no paragraph. And then you also have the subtotal box that you can subtotal by timekeeper, by transaction code, category, or date. So those are some other options there. So if you're not liking how that middle section is looking for those fees, this is the first place I would start. One down here, I didn't mention the total for non-billable hours. If you don't have that checked, it won't give you that total of hours for that. So that's a place there for non-billable that you'll want to pay attention to. The fee recap, if you want to include that down at the bottom, you can have that recapped by the timekeeper, the level, or the rate. There's a lot of times I have firms that want to have that grouped by associate, partner, paralegal's time. They don't care who the individual timekeeper is, but they need to break it that way. You can actually recap at the bottom and do it by timekeeper level, or by all of them that charge $225 an hour, all that charge $200, whatever. That's how that will work there for the recap. And then you have what you want to include in that recap. Do you want the hours? Do you want the total? Do you want the level description? And then you have another way. Let me pick one here. You can do the average hourly, the calculated rate, or the transaction rate. The transaction rate is the actual rate that you put out there. You know, you can average it out or do calculated. Again, these are things that you can see examples of under the yellow question mark. And while I'm on this page, if I just click on that, it will give me those examples. I can click on the fee recap part, and it will show me all of these different types and what they look like. And for time purposes, I'm not going into that, so I'm not trying to rush through, but we are limited. So I'll let you kind of look at that and go underneath that that question mark, and you can do that. The cost payment format, again, we have the standard. You do have the ability to group costs by the transaction code, the detail with the subtotal, or you can do it by just the subtotal. Sometimes you just want to group all the postage or all the court fees or all that kind of thing, and you can do that here by grouping them by transaction code. The standard is just going to give you the standard straight out. Whatever you've entered is going to be in there, exactly how you entered it. You can summarize them. You can group those together, or you can just not include any expenses at all. You can also do the same thing with the advances. So I guess expenses would be more your postage, copies, phone, fax, things like that. Your advances are going to be your court costs, medical records expenses, things in that nature. And then you can have your payment format. So do you want to show the details, the totals, or the total by date on your payments? And so that's where you can change those things. Now, the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you set up the layouts, and Paul talked about it, we've talked about before how to create statement layouts to have the top of the statement and the bottom of the statement look exactly like you want it, and you can have several layouts because different clients might have different layouts at the top and bottom. But then you can come in and assign those layouts to different templates. So you could have a final template, and you could assign whatever sample layout or whatever layout you've created to that particular template. So if you have a certain attorney that wants his bills a certain way to show hours or rate or amounts or whatever, and you create a template for him and his clients, you could also tie in a layout that has his heading and his footer, whatever he has defined, and you can associate it with that. So that's a way that that all ties in together with the top and the bottom of your statement and then the body. There are a couple of others in here that are defined, and just as quick examples, like I said, the contingency cases, you can see that that will be set up as an info only. They include different information. And if you want to copy a template and all of its information that you have within that template, but you want to tweak it a little bit, if you come in here and just rename it right here, if I made this one contingency 2, and I just hit my tab key, it will let me put in a new description, but it will maintain all of the information that I had on my contingency template, but then I can change it. So if you just have to change one thing or two things, that's a good way to do it. Instead of hitting the new button, just come in while you're on the template that you want to save the information on, and come in and just type in the name, hit your tab key, and it will remember everything here. And then I can say, well, this one I just want to change. I don't want the timekeeper initials, or whatever that would be, and I can save that version of it. It makes it a little quicker and easier. That's kind of a very quick, in a nutshell, billing template, but our statement templates. Is there any questions? No questions, Mary Jo. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Paul.
She must have done a very good job explaining. She must have done a very good job explaining. I'll repeat that since I was muted. Okay. I'm having all sorts of hardware problems today. I am a software guy, I must admit. Hardware is just not my my bailiwick. And if anybody knows what a bailiwick is, my mother used to say that, and I'm really dying to know what a bailiwick is because hardware is not mine. I'm going to talk about general ledger and the income statement and the balance sheet. Those are the two things that people use general ledger for from a reporting standpoint. There are a lot of other things you can get out of there that you can report on, but what they want to know, mainly when they're keeping their books, is how much money are we making. And so an income statement is going to tell you that. It's going to show you how much income we brought in and how much money we spent, and bottom line, what our net profit or loss is. This is not a very good income statement because it's got a negative $38,000 profit loss. In other words, I've lost $38,000. But nonetheless, this is a sample in our sample data, and it shows us what the most simple income statement would look like. A lot of people do not even know what a balance sheet is, and if you don't, then that's fine. That means probably that you don't need it. But I'll show you one real quick. This is where you see the things that are not related to the income statement. You're not going to see your income and expenses over here. Instead, you're going to show your assets and your liabilities, the things that the firm owns and lists as assets in their books, and the liabilities that the firm has, the people that are owed money for whatever reason. Maybe it's the payroll taxes that you're holding but that you still owe to the government, or a bank loan, or whatever. Now, again, as I said, a lot of firms, especially the smaller firms, don't really have a balance sheet, or if they do, it's something that their accountant prepares and they don't really care about it. Maybe the accountant looks at it and tells it whether it's good or bad. But most everybody knows what an income statement is, so we're going to look at the things I'm going to show you from the perspective of an income statement, and the things I'm going to show you will apply in both areas. So back to the income statement. As you can see, when we print an income statement, we are pretty much looking at a month. Now, my demo system lives in November of 2011, so that's why we're looking at an income statement from November of 2011. And things are set up to come out on the income statement in a certain order by how you set up your chart of accounts. Now, that phrase right there throws fear into the hearts of many people, because the chart of accounts is a very complex thing. The chart of accounts is basically all the accounts that you have in your system and how they're organized and whether they're assets or liabilities or income or expense accounts, and whether they're detail or header or footer accounts, header or total accounts, I should say, and it's all kind of complex. So if we were to, for instance, go into the income account for fees, we'll scroll down until we get down to the I's here. Here, for instance, is our fee income account, and it is a detail account, and it is an income type account, and it is a credit account. I am not going to talk about these things, what type of an account it is, whether it's, well, I will talk about detail and header and total, but whether it's an income, an expense, an advance, income expense, asset or liability, and whether it's a debit or a credit account, those things have to do with accounting, and they have to do with how you set up your books from an accounting standpoint, and they are not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about instead is how you can make your income statement look better or reorganize it or put it in a different sort order, things like that. Now, one thing that people have usually coming into a system like this, or they certainly have after they've got it set up, is the account numbers. But what people don't understand are these sort sequences, these sort orders. These are how you determine what order these things show up in on your income statement, not this. The only time that the account number would have any bearing at all on what order things show up in the income statement on is if all of these were the same, which of course is not how people set it up. So let's go back to that income statement. I'm going to actually set it so I can jump back and forth between the chart and the income statement. And I'm going to go back to this January or November of 2011 income statement. And so the first thing I'm going to look at is this sort order. Now, I want my FUTA to appear above my SUTA. And that is determined by what sort order we have. So if I go and find the employer FUTA, and I'm going to do that by going back to my chart of accounts, but then I can't see the other accounts, Mary Jo. And I find SUTA, and I'm going to do that by looking down here. Help me if you see it, Mary Jo. There it is. Here's SUTA. Here's FUTA. Now, you'll notice that this is 5310 and 5320, but that is not why this comes out after this one. It's this number here. And we're looking at FUTA, and it's 1900. And if I go back, SUTA is 1800. If I go back one more just to see what's next up, I see 1750. So with that in mind, if I were to change this, I want this to appear above SUTA, and SUTA is 1800. So if I change this to 1790 and save it, and then I go back over to my income statement, and, whoops, I'll just rerun it. I now have FUTA appearing above SUTA. Now, for all of you accounting people out there that know how you actually pronounce that, if it's not really FUTA, please be kind. So that's what the sort sequence does. And you'll notice that when we go back into the chart of accounts that there's room between those. And the reason we put room in between those, 1800, 1750, 2000, is so that we can do exactly what I did. This had been 1900. I decided I wanted it in front of this, so I noticed that I had as much room as those 50 numbers, so I made it fall in between 1750 and 1800 by making it 1790. Now, I'm throwing all these numbers around. I hope I'm not confusing people, but that order is exactly what I'm looking at as far as determining how these things come out. Now, you can print your chart of accounts. I'm going to go ahead and close all these windows because I'm getting myself confused. You can print your chart of accounts, and when you do, one of your options is to print it in sort sequence order. So if you get to a point where your account numbers don't really dictate the order, you may want to print your chart of accounts in a detail or summary sort sequence order so you can see the chart of accounts and see exactly how things are going to come out in the actual income statement. Another thing that we have in here in the chart of accounts is the difference between a detail and a summary sort. Now, people ask a lot, what does that mean? Because you'll notice the numbers are pretty much the same. If I run my income statement in a detail mode, you will see all the detail, not only the fee income, but the total fee income, not only all these individual accounts, but the total salaries, not only all these individual personnel expenses, but the total personnel expenses. If I run this same report in a summary mode, all I'm going to see is the totals. Total income, total salaries, total other personnel. These are the three totals that we just looked at. But when we looked at it in the detail mode, we also saw all the individual account numbers that are making that total up. Now, if we go back to the chart and we look at that section, what we'll find, I'm going down to the expenses, and that's right here. We have personnel expenses, and that's a header account. We have personnel expenses summary, and that's a header account. But what I'm really looking for is this salaries. And we had partner salaries and associate salaries and legal assistant salaries and legal secretary salaries and file clerk salaries and other staff salaries, and then total. This one right here is a total. All of these in the middle are detail, and this is a header. When we surround these detail accounts with a header at the beginning and a total at the end, we get something that looks like this. Right there. Here's the header, and all it shows is the word that I had there. Here's the total, and here's the detail. So hypothetically, I could have subtotals within here. I could say attorney salaries, and I could have a total account before partner and a header account before partner and a total account after associate. And what that would do is would provide another level of totaling in here, and I might have then other salaries that appears above here and a total for other salaries that appears below here. And I would then have these two subtotaled and these four subtotaled with this as my overall total. So you can go deep in your layering of your totals, but the bottom line is if you have an income statement that doesn't really have any of these totals, then you've really just set up a chart of accounts that has your detail accounts. And it's really the totals that make it look right, that make you see things like total income, total salary expenses, total other personnel expenses. All these different things that you're seeing here that are totals have to do with these total and header accounts in my chart. Now, another type of account that we'll see is a comment account. Now, I don't even think I have any in here. But if I wanted to insert a line of text in between one account and another, maybe for descriptive purposes, maybe to further enhance a description of what a total is incorporating, I can just simply add an account and make its type a comment account. Okay? So you have heading accounts and total accounts, which are used in conjunction to surround detail accounts, and then you have comment accounts, which can go anywhere and can insert random bits of text, well, not random, but specific bits of text into your income statement and your balance sheet. And where will they insert those headings and totals, and where will they insert those comments? That all depends on these sort sequences. Now, of course, the type of account that we're not talking about is a detail account. If I do a little scanning through here, here's a detail account. Why am I not talking about detail accounts? Because that's accounting. Setting up your chart of accounts and your detail accounts and whether they're assets or liabilities or income or expenses and whether they're debit or credit accounts, that's the root of your accounting system. And I'm not going to go into detail here. We can help you with that if you have questions about how to set it up. But here what we're talking about is how to make these things look pretty. And by that I mean how to insert those total and header accounts, how to insert those comment accounts, how to make sure your sort order comes out exactly the way you want, what the difference is between a detail and a summary. Now, I will tell you, for those of you who are curious, and I suppose you couldn't be curious because you wouldn't know this is coming out, you've noticed we have a detail and we have a summary type of printing for both the balance sheet and the income statement, but that's it. We can't say, well, here's an income statement that looks one way, and here's an income statement that looks another way, and here's an income statement that looks a third way. We really don't have that flexibility. Mary Jo was just talking about having many, many different ways to have bills look. We really don't have that flexibility right now in the income statement and the balance sheet and the general ledger, but come version 17, we will. If you promise not to tell anyone that I told you this, I'll tell you that one of the features of General Ledger in version 17 is the ability to define multiple layouts for your income statement and multiple layouts for your balance sheet. So you could have one income statement that looks the way the partners want to see it from one perspective, and another income statement that looks the way you'd want to show it to a bank or somebody that's considering extending credit to the firm, and many other types. So that's something that's coming out. I haven't even seen it yet. I will see it next week. So it's something that, when version 17 comes out later on this year, should be there, but I can't comment too much on how it's going to look because I haven't seen it yet. That, in a nutshell, it's how you control the way the income statement and the balance sheet look. You do it through sort sequences, total and header accounts, common accounts, and the use of the sort summary and detail sort orders.
Add real quick, Paul, the totaling and heading accounts have to be equal. You have to have the same amount of heading accounts as you do totaling accounts, or you get this little message that comes up.
Yeah.
And it says that your total and heading accounts don't balance or they don't equal or something like that. And so if any of you are getting that, we'd be glad to help you straighten that out. It's because somewhere out there you've got too many headings and not enough totals.
Yes, it's very important that you plan out how you're doing this and that you execute it in a very orderly way, because if you end up, like Mary Jo said, with that stray header account in there that you meant to get rid of that you didn't, it's going to wreak havoc. Because what it's doing is it's using that combination of the header and the total account to determine what to total. And so when it has one more header account than it finds total accounts, it really throws havoc into the situation and can't really deal with it. Leanne, do we have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have an answer to what is a bailiwick.
Oh, okay. What is a bailiwick?
Well, it's pronounced bailiwick. Bailiwick. And the definition number 2 is a person's area of skill, knowledge, authority, or work.
Well, that is exactly what we're looking at, because, as I said, hardware is not my bailiwick. Software is. Now, Leanne, did you go out and Google that?
You know what? No, Matthew provided that information for me.
Cool. Very good. Thank you, Matthew.
I told him if we had a prize, he'd get it.
If we have a prize, he'll get it. Maybe we should send him a trophy.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, that is it.
I have another question.
Oh, we have another question. Go ahead.
The question here from Dick is, how would you present several months at a time?
Ooh, I didn't really go into this. You don't right now. You can present a quarter. For instance, you can go to March. I'm going to go to 11, but I'm going to say I'm printing March. And I'm going to do quarter to date. That is one way to do that. Would print January, February, and March. But it will combine them. Yes, that's a very good point, Mary Jo. Thank you. You can combine them and present several months as a quarter. But right now in our system, you can't. You would need to print separate months, or if you wanted, you could print separate months to a spreadsheet and then kind of do a little cutting and pasting and put them together. Now, this is one of the things that I anticipate version 17 changing. So as any of you know that have come to these virtual user group meetings for years, we're big on having several meetings devoted to new features when a new major release comes out. So we will go into great detail sometime in the coming months about what the changes are to general ledger statements, the balance sheet and the income statement. And so we'll let you know exactly how that's changing as we get into version 17.
Paul, can you show how to do an individual month right now?
Yeah, well, an individual month would be that you want month to date for a specific month. So if I want to print May of 2011, I choose May, I choose month to date. I can also do quarter to date, I can also do year to date. So let's say we're doing March, because that makes more sense. This would show the March month, the first quarter, and it would also show, well, let's do June. This would show the second quarter, the 6th month, and the first half of the year, if that makes sense. Of course, you always want to make sure you have the right month for your beginning year-to-date figures, because that's going to be the beginning of your fiscal year. A couple other things you can do real quick. You can print the account number. Most people don't. You can print zero balance accounts, but most people only want to see things that have amounts in them. You can print last year. You can print percentages. And we do have this budgeting thing that I didn't talk about. You can put in budget amounts for each of your accounts on a monthly basis, so you can print budget amounts next to actual amounts. So if we were to print this right now, we'd get this 6th month, this second quarter, and this first half of the year, and it would look something like this. Okay. Now, if I wanted just July of 2011, now keep in mind my system thinks it's November of 2011, but I don't want any of that other stuff, then I would simply say July, month to date, and there we have July. Now, if I want to see how that compares to last year, now we have July 2011 versus July of 2010. Obviously, my sample data doesn't have anything for July of 2010, but that's beside the point. This should have numbers in it if you've been using your system for a year and have those numbers in the system to compare. You can also say we want percentages. And so what this is telling me is that this is 96% of my income, and this is 4% of my income. This is 58% of my overall expenses, and it breaks down into these further percentage breakdowns. Okay. Any more questions, Dan?
No more questions.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, and we did it relatively quickly considering we were 6 minutes late, and we learned what a ballywick was. So I think we've done a good job. We will be listing our topics for next month's meeting within the next day or so, as we also get our recorded version of this webinar up, or this bug virtual user group meeting up on the website, attorneycomputersystems.com. As most of you know, you can go there and see recorded versions going as far back, I believe, as 3.5 years. And that should do it. Everybody have a good rest of the afternoon, and we will see you in a month. Thanks much, everybody.